What is up, Planeswalkers? Thicc back with some more Magic the Gathering Arena. Don't forget to head on over to flipsidegaming.com and use promo code 6 for 10% off on orders over $10. It's a good deal, and it helps support the channel. Now today we're looking at the final high-voted deck from the Patreon poll, and that is Mono Green Stompy. This deck is not exactly my forte, so if I do make a large number of mistakes during the gameplay, bear with me. I'm going to bring this in Best of 1 ranked. I was thinking that this is meant to be a more competitive style deck. So I thought that I should play this in Best of 3. However, Best of 3 doesn't have a rank system right now, which means that it's actually better for me to show you how well this deck can do in Best of 1 ranked than it would be to show you how it does in Best of 3, which I think is a bit strange, but that's how we're going to do it. I will still talk about the sideboard though. Now this Mono Green Stompy is essentially a curve creature deck where you want to essentially play a creature every curve, play out a really early Ghalta, and have your opponent just overwhelmed with large green creatures before they're able to really respond and do anything, and you just kill them that way. That said, it is very linear, so if this is not the type of strategy you're looking for, then this is definitely not going to be the deck for you. But if you like casting really big dudes really fast, then this is a fantastic deck for that. Now, this is also a relatively cheap deck. Not too many rares and mythics. Theoretically, you could replace something like Nullhide Ferox, but it's relatively cheap considering its power level. So we start off with 4 Llanowar Elves, and the reason that Llanowar Elves is great in this style deck, even though it is a small 1/1, is because you can skip from 1 mana to 3 mana and have Steel Leaf Champion really early on, which is a fantastic play. Our other 1-drop is a 4 of Pelt Collector. This card is insane right now, and I think it's going to get better with the Gruul coming in the next set. Whenever a creature you cast that is bigger than it comes into play, you get a 1/1 counter on it, and if it has 3 more 1/1 counters, it gets triple. But whenever a creature dies that has more power toughness, or no, it's just power, then you still get a counter. So let's say you have Pelt Collector on turn 1, and then on turn 2 you play Thorn Lieutenant. This becomes not Thorn Lieutenant, sorry, Kraul Harpooner, let's say. This becomes a 2/2, then if they kill Kraul Harpooner, this will have less power, it'll have 2, and this will have 3. So this gets another counter, and you'll still have 3 power on board, which is very nice. Moving on to our 2-drop slot, we have 4 Kraul Harpooners. Kraul Harpooner is fantastic because of the number of flying creatures running around. Additionally, it is just a 2-mana 3/2. That's a decent rate. It helps our Pelt Collectors. It has reach for what it's worth, but really the fact that this is a 2-mana 3/2 is fantastic, and the fact that it is able to deal with things like Niv Mizzet, for example, really make this card really playable. 2 Merfolk Branchwalkers, a nice way to trigger Pelt Collector, and a decent way to kind of go through our deck, make sure the top of the library is not terrible. But one of the weaker 2-drops for sure. Thorn Lieutenant is a fantastic card because it still does work with a turn 1 Thorn Lieutenant, and if your opponent tries to get rid of it, you're still going to get something out of it, which is very nice. You want to have a creature that's nice and pesky for your control opponents to deal with. If they want to cast down this, then you still have some sort of value. Additionally, if for some reason you do get flooded out, and it shouldn't happen too often, we're playing only 22 lands, if you do get flooded out, you can turn this into a 6-power creature, which is very nice. The utility is helpful. We are running 4 Thrashing Brontodons. There are plenty of enchantments that are running around that we don't care to see. Artifacts as well, although artifacts a bit to a lesser extent. There are things like disinformation campaigns, which could get out of control. There are the Eldest Reborns, things like that. It's just some annoying cards, especially against some of the random decks that you might see on ladder. For example, Merfolk. This is really nice at stopping the dark deep root waters. So it's just a nice utility creature that has a decent power toughness ratio for what it's cost, and it works really well with Pelt Collector. Steel Leaf Champion is kind of the cream of the crop for this deck. If you don't have this card, you probably shouldn't be playing Mono Green Stompy. You can, as I said, curve Llanowar Elves into Steel Leaf Stompy on turn 2, and the fact that this can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less means that for the first couple turns of the game, this is going to chunk your opponent for about half of their life, right? If you get this out on turn 2 and you attack with it on turn 3, your opponent is likely not going to have a creature that's big enough to block this. And even once they do have it, for example, a 3-power creature, it would die to this. So this is a very strong card to have on turn 2, which is very nice. Blanchwood Armor it's a buff. Usually you don't tend to want to run enchantments in linear strategies because of the fact that they can 2-for-1 you. So if you put this down on, say, a Pelt Collector, for example, and your opponent removes Pelt Collector, then you've essentially lost 2 cards for your opponent's 1. That said, this deck is so efficient and effective at putting out a large number of really annoying bodies that it's totally fine to run Blanchwood Armor. For example, you can put Blanchwood Armor on a Llanowar Elves to make it an actual threat alongside the rest of your threats if you realize that a 1/1 is no longer tough on the board. You can put it on a Steel Leaf Champion if your opponent does only have 2 power creatures and maybe they're tapped out and you decide to go for lethal. You can put it on Thorn Lieutenant so that even if your opponent does end up removing your creature, it's not a full 2-for-1 since you do so get something out of it. Or you can put it on Nullhide Ferox or Vine Mare because both of these have hexproof. Of course, with Nullhide Ferox you will need to pay its additional cost, but that's kind of fine when you have a giant hexproof creature. Speaking of our hexproof creatures, all of our creatures in our 4-mana slot are hexproof. We have 3 Nullhide Feroxes and 2 Vine Mares. You can change this up as you please. For example, you could run 4 Vine Mares if you don't have the mythic wildcards in order to play Ferox. They're similar, but they are, for what it's worth, a little bit different. Ferox is really nice with a lot of discard running around, and Vine Mare is really nice against pretty much mono black decks. Any deck where you think that your opponent is having a lot of black, it's very nice, but Nullhide Ferox is technically better since it is a 6/6 and not just a 5/3. This can still die to getting blocked out by smallish creatures. And then the cream of the crop, the man, the myth, the legend, Ghalta. Primal Hunger. I think Ghalta might actually be a girl. I don't remember. Anyway, Ghalta is a 12-mana card. We only have 22 lands. You might be saying, Theorix, how are you playing a 12-mana 12/12 with only 22 lands? Well, I'm glad you asked. It has a really insane cost reduction mechanic, whereas it costs X less, where X is the total power of creatures you control. If we go turn 1 Llanowar Elves into turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion, that's already 6 power. This would then be reduced to 4 generic and 2 green. If we next turn play, let's say, a Vine Mare, the turn following, this costs 2 mana. 2! And it has trample. We could play this on 3 or 4. That is redonkulous. Very, very strong card. One of the premier reasons to play Mono Green Stompy if you want to play dumb 12/12s really fast. Unfortunately, unlike these two, this does not have hexproof, so it will die. Luckily, can't be cast down, which is nice. Anyway, moving on to our sideboard, we are running 2 Prey Upons and 2 Rabid Bites. I see a lot of lists running Prey Upon, and I'm not entirely sure why they're running it over Rabid Bite. It does cost 1 less mana, which, you know, in a 22 land deck is not insignificant, but Rabid Bite does make it so that your creature doesn't have to get damaged by the opposing creature. So I just decided to do a split and show you that this is what people are playing right now for some reason. This is what I would play. We're running 4 Shaper Sanctuary. If you know that your opponent is running a large number of single target removal, then you can bring in Shaper Sanctuary to make sure that whenever your opponent does end up killing your creature, you maintain a little bit of gas, a little bit of card advantage. 3 Suspicious Bookcase. If your opponent is gumming up the board and making it really annoying, having a bunch of chump blockers, for example, against the token strategies, you can bring in a Bookcase. It's hilarious, but you can do it, and then you have a Ghalta, and then you make it unblockable. I don't know how Ghalta fits through a Bookcase, but whatever. And you kill your opponent. And then we're running 4 Deathgorge Scavengers. It works really well with Pelt Collector, it works really well with Llanowar Elves, and it works really well at eating the graveyard of Arc-like Phoenix decks, as well as Golgari Midrange. Alright, we talked more than we need to for Dinosaur Stompy. We're just heading into ranked. As I said, this deck is not flashy. It is not a super intricate deck. This deck is a deck where you want to play dudes, you want to play them fast, and you want your opponent to go bye-bye. Very linear, but linear does not mean dumb. Linear does not mean bad. It just means linear. It just means different. This hand is not great. The reason it's not great is because we don't have a turn 1. That said, a 6-card hand is almost certainly going to be worse than this, so we will keep it, and we do have the luxury of going first. If we were going second, this hand would be even worse. Opponent mulliganing is really nice for us. But we can, at the very least, Thorn Lieutenant into Steel Leaf Champion on turn 3, so that's still fine. We still have an okay opener. It's just, we could have a bad flood out position. But if our opponent, for example, plays Thief of Sanity, then we do have Kraul Harpooner, which is nice. Let's see, this is possibly a Thought Erasure. Yep, Thought Erasure. Probably going to get rid of the Steel Leaf Champion, which makes sense. And then we likely end up just playing the... Oh, they get rid of Blanchwood Armor. Reasonable. They could probably have... They probably have Ritual of Soot in that case. That definitely makes me think that they have Ritual of Soot. So this is probably all we're going to keep on the board. Against control decks, you want to make sure that you're applying pressure, but you're not just running headlong into board wipes. And the fact that they took our Blanchwood Armor makes me think that they're more likely to have board wipes. I think I would rather get rid of Llanowar Elves, because if I top deck a Blanchwood Armor, it's actually like better. So here, I don't think it's correct to play either of these. I think we want to just attack here for 7. And our opponent is on a 2-turn clock. I could play out the Kraul Harpooner. 7. No, that would not change. I would have to play both of these cards in order to put them on a 1-turn clock, in order to put them on lethal. However, I am almost certain that based upon what they did, that they have Ritual of Soot. Almost certain. And I have no reason to play that far into it. Our opponent may not have drawn a land, which is potentially why they conceded, or maybe they realized that I was saving things and decided to concede for that. As you can see, I have practiced quite a bit with this deck. Because, as I said, this is not the typical style of deck that I play, so I wanted to make sure I made as few mistakes as possible. As we find our next game against Bobert. Here we are in gold 3, I think. I'll keep this. Once again, no 1-drop. I hear the crackling sound, and apparently that's just something that Arena does. I apologize for it, but I'm not going to restart my recording. And I would need to restart the client, I believe, is what I was told. So hopefully it's not too intrusive. Oh, a turn 1 Zhalfirin Void. Interesting. Interesting indeed. I would rather play out the Thorn Lieutenant, because, as I said, it is pesky to remove. Whereas if we play the Kraul Harpooner, it is technically a more aggressive start, but if it gets removed, then we are left with nothing. Whereas if Thorn Lieutenant gets removed, we have something. Steamkin, interesting. Okay. I don't know what this is, but we can potentially race them, especially since we were able to pick up this Steel Leaf Champion. It's going to be relatively difficult for our mono-red opponent to deal with. Although the fact that they have Zhalfirin Void makes me think that they're like big red. But I do have Thrashing Brontodons for Experimental Frenzies and the like. They could Lava Coil my Steel Leaf, which is fair. But I'm not too worried about it. Wow, yeah, they're just taking the damage. I mean, our opponent is already at 11, and we had what is arguably a weak hand. As I hear the sizzle in the background. War Boss, sure. So this gets a little bit larger. And the 1/1 is going to fall into its death. They don't have a wizard, so I can block this freely without fear of a 3 damage removal. Interesting. I don't honestly have a reason to block there. They definitely could have shock, but I really have no reason to block there. Because I'd be putting my Thrashing Brontodon in undue duress, and I'm still at 17, right? I have no reason to be afraid of this board. And I have every reason to continue just smack in the face. This deck is a deck of smorks. You just smork. I mean, they can double block and things, but I'm relatively unscared. Again, apologies for the sizzle. That is apparently something wrong with Arena. So yeah, that's a decent block there, because I assume they're going to shock my face. They could block and shock, and then go to 6. They would shock my face, alright. But now, they're under a lot of duress, and I think I will go ahead and play the other Steel Leaf Champion. This just makes it so that Lava Coil isn't, like, perfect against my board. But they do kind of need to leave things back in order to survive. So let's see what they end up doing. They do have a large amount of mana, but I do have Thrashing Brontodon. Banefire for a bunch, alright. They did technically miss out on a +1/+1 counter if they wanted to utilize the mana. Alright, being very conservative with their attacks, which is respectable. I think I will send in my Steel Leaf Champion. Do I send in my Steel Leaf Champion? I think I do. They have to trade one of their Steamkins. So I think this is actually fine. No reason to send our Brontodon to death. But hurting a Steamkin does mean that they're technically out of burst mana if they are playing Experimental Frenzy, which I assume they are, based upon purely what I've seen. This is definitely not a normal mono-red aggro deck. Interesting, okay. So I'm gonna do something with that mana. Risk factor? Sure, that does mean I get to keep my Steel Leaf Champion, though. And I think I'm safe going to 10. Since they do have Steamkin, I don't really want them drawing more cards. Am I safe going to 6, though? Am I safe going to 6? Oh, interesting. Arclight Phoenix. So yeah, this is a very different deck. I think I am safe going for the 6 because I do have 3 blockers, and my opponent's only going to draw 1 card. They could draw Experimental Frenzy, which would not take Steamkin up, so they'd have 1 mana in order... They would... Yeah, so I think it's correct to just take the damage. Based on the situation at hand, I think it's correct to take the damage. If our opponent does top deck Frenzy, they can have Frenzy with 1 red mana up. Steamkin would go to 2 counters. Okay. So yeah, we're still in the clear here. But our opponent can't really attack with too much. Easy block. Llanowar Elves is not great, but it is a blocker. And we do have Brontodons for days. And I will go ahead and attack with a Steel Leaf Champion. And I think I'm going to also attack with a Brontodon. And the reason it's Brontodon over Kraul Harpooner is because... Actually, you know what? I think I should attack with Kraul Harpooner instead. Because if my opponent top decks... Like a... No, Lava Coil still kills both. Shock would only kill Harpooner. But my assumption is a Harpooner would go to my face. Yes, I know it's my turn. I'm trying to think. As you can see, this is not... It's not a mindless deck. You definitely have to make decisions on when to attack and with what. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think attacking with the Brontodon should be fine. Because it does force them to block. And I see that they have no cards in hand. They literally have to block here. And they have to block this with something I assume that they're going to chump. So they're going to be down to 2 cards, yeah. I potentially should have actually attacked with everything, now that I think about it, now that I do the math. Although they're losing their entire board. So I'm relatively confident now that I'm fine. I think I should have attacked with the other Brontodon and the Harpooner. Yeah. Yeah, looking back at it, I do think that was an error on my part. I think I should have been a little bit more aggressive, but as I said, this is not exactly my forte. But I've been doing well enough. I've had 10 wins today with the deck, so. I don't know how many games total I've played, but it's not like 20. So I've been doing relatively well with the deck. And in gold, going against Chromium. This is an interesting hand. Because it... I mean, it's strange, but I think I'm going to go turn 1 Llanowar Elf into Pelt Collector Llanowar Elf. And then I do have access to Blanchwood Armor. So hopefully I can still get Ghalta out relatively quickly, but I do think this is kind of a weak hand. I don't think our 6 would be better. And against control is not great. Drawing the Branchwalker does mean I'm switching up my strategy, though. I was initially going to go for the Llanowar into double 1-drop, because I didn't have a good follow-up to Pelt Collector. I'm hoping that I get a land so that I can play Steel Leaf Champion and have a just really nice curve. We're going to graveyard that, because we do not need it, and we prefer a land. But even if we don't get a land, we still can double up on Llanowar Elf. Against white, we do need to be careful against, why am I talking like that? I have no idea. Against both Seal Away and Settle the Wreckage. Right now, we don't have to worry too much about Cleansing Nova, though. So our opponent's doesn't do anything at the end of our turn, which is very nice. 4-drop. No, no double white. Very important. They can make a 1/1. They can Chemist's Insight. But very important, they cannot double white us. I believe this means I can play Ghalta. If it doesn't get countered, which it looks like it's getting countered, which is fine. I don't want to play too heavily into a board wipe, so I don't think I'm going to play the other Llanowar Elf. Because if they do board wipe, then I can Llanowar Elf into Blanchwood Armor, for example. So I think I'm fine just attacking here. And this does set them up for lethal, so they do need to answer our threats. I mean, that is reasonable, I suppose. Kraul Harpooner, let's see. So I can cast Blanchwood Armor. Because Blanchwood Armor is functionally free because it gives 3 power, and I can still cast Ghalta. But, I'm still worried about... 3, if I put Blanchwood Armor on the Merfolk, this would have to be blocked, because it's exactly 6. So then I'd get through for 1, 2, 3, 4 damage, they'd go to 2. I don't think that's good enough. I think what I want to do here is just play out Ghalta and attack with the other 2 to get through some chip damage. If my opponent has a board wipe, then they have a board wipe. If they don't, then they don't. But if they do, then I do have stuff I can do as follow-up, so hopefully it's not going to be too bad. And if our opponent's plan is to just make a bunch of blockers, Ghalta kind of says no to that. So we'll see what they have. Anticipate? Alright, so it looks like their plan is make a bunch of blockers. They can no longer Cleansing Nova. They can still Settle the Wreckage. So I do need to be careful about that. This could be a bounce spell. Bounce spell would no longer save them, though. If they kicked it. The Blink of an Eye. Alright, cool. If they kicked a Blink of an Eye, then we'd have 2 3-power creatures, and we could Blanchwood Armor our Llanowar Elf. So we would have 3 3-power creatures, and they would have... Oh, wait, they would have 3 blockers. Never mind. Still. Alright. I mean, this is going relatively fast. We should be able to get another game in. Yeah, as I said, the deck's not flat. I've said it 1,000 times. Who cares? The deck's not flashy, but it's good. Mother of Scones. Great name. This is a good hand. If we top deck a Steel League Champion, I think we might play Llanowar Elf over the Pelt Collector, because in most matchups I think that's a better lead off, but we do have Pelt Collector into Kraul Harpooner. This is a hideous art for Blanchwood Armor. I don't know if there's better art for Blanchwood Armor, though, so... Shot through the heart and you're to blame. You give love a bad name. I play my part and you play your game. You give love a bad name. Fuck y'all. Alright, opponent. Well, let's see what you got. Show your moves. Show your moves. I'm gonna take a drink. Delicious. Alright, just sitting here with my thoughts. That's fine. It's not awkward at all. Gotta check, make sure I'm still on the internet. Go to Chrome. Alright, well, I don't know why you had to rope me on turn 1. When your play was an island. You gonna opt? Wow, they didn't rope me for an opt. This is just gonna be a repeat of last time. Blue-red, alright, so we're gonna be playing Thorn Lieutenant. Incredibly rude. Still playing Thorn Lieutenant because of the fact that if they want to get rid of it, it's going to be annoying. Additionally, we want to save the Kraul Harpooners because I assume that this is going to be Drakes. I see blue-red, I assume Drakes. Could be Wizards, and if it is Wizards, then Adeliz is still something we want to counter. Electromancer, alright. Luckily I can attack in here. Probably going to Radical Idea into turn is my guess. Not really a reason to Blanchwood Armor, I don't think. I think it would be best if I just attacked. Unlikely my opponent is going to block. And then I probably would just play up Brontodon. Yeah, makes sense to play up Brontodon. And my opponent's roping me that. Okay, thank you. Could have... Sure, that's fine. Could have put Blanchwood Armor on that. Would have been a 5-6? 5-6 Dece. But, I like the idea of having a multitude of creatures. I think that most Phoenix decks have Blink of an Eye. So it could be a Crackling Drake here, which Kraul Harpooner does kill. Murmuring Mystic. Alright, so the Mystic build is a little bit more annoying, for sure. Here, I think I'm going to Llanowar Elf into Steelleaf Champion. Steelleaf Champion's a really annoying card for them to deal with. And we are just going to double attack. No matter what, no matter how our opponent blocks, if they decide to block both, then I do get to kill something. Strange block. They took one unnecessary point of damage. I don't really get that, but it's fine, I suppose. But I can Blanchwood Armor on my Steelleaf Champion, and that's really annoying for my opponent, who's going to have a bunch of things smaller than 2 power. Tormenting Voice, sure. They didn't discard a Phoenix, which is nice. I do need to be a little careful that I don't die. Wow, just radical ideas for days. I also need to be careful of Blink of an Eye. So, I could deal 9 damage to them. Or I can just play Ghalta. I think playing Ghalta is better. They can counter this. Which it looks like they're going to do. Nope. Alright. So, I think this is fine. I think I'm going to Kraul Harpooner one of the birds. This does leave a Drake or Phoenix or Niv alive. But I think I just want the tempo here. Fight a bird. Kills a blocker. And I think, honestly, I attack with almost everything. I definitely attack with almost everything, but I don't know if I attack with everything. If I attack with my Llanowar Elf, they kind of have a free block here. And then they still... Yeah, no, there's no reason to attack with my Llanowar Elf. I might need it for Blanchwood Armor. Yep, Radical Idea, that's fine. My opponent could, like, block a ton with their birds. But they would lose a decent amount of their birds. And I do have a Ghalta. Opponent is just running through their deck, though. Easy block. So they will lose 2 birds. With 1 stone. That's a thorn. I'll easily kill your Electromancer and a bird. That's totally fine with me, and they still take 5. Yep, bird and Electromancer. That sounds good. That sounds good. And they're down to 8, so they do need to do something here. I'm still 20, and I do have Blanchwood Armor with both a Ghalta and a Steelleaf Champion in play. Now, I think what I would do is I would put the Blanchwood Armor on Steelleaf Champion, because if I put it on Ghalta, like, that's just overkill. My opponent would still die to the trample from Ghalta, like, anyway. So I want to diversify my bonds, and Steelleaf Champion is already difficult enough to block. And our opponent, they're not gaining cards, right? They're gaining birds, but the birds can help against 2 beefy boys. Beefy. Shock. Reasonable. Those weren't part of my win condition, though. Opponent has exactly 1 card in hand, so even if they have 1 bounce spell, I should still have lethal 5s, blah, blah. I'm not doing math. Math is for blockers. Do I attack with... Oh, wait. This technically should just kill them. Yeah, okay. If they had a bounce spell, they could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. They would have taken just 2. Yeah. So they would have survived if they had a bounce spell, but looks like they did not. So, I mean, that's just the power of the Stompy deck. Yeah, I mean, not splashy, but effective. I think that's the best way to sum up that deck is effective. I'd like to thank my wonderful patrons, especially Salamander and Draga, and our two newcomers here. If you'd like to join them and support the channel, you'll find links to that in the description down below, as well as links to my Discord, where we hang out and talk about magic and other nonsense, where you can direct challenge people and have a bunch of fun chatting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go and tap that like button, add a subscription to your mana pool, and cast a comment in the comment section down below. And until next time, all will be one.